The Rodgers and Hammerstein partnership really is one of the most significant of this era. And if, for example, we look at other notable partnerships, that include Mozart and DuPont, who only did three operas together: La Nozze di Figaro, Così fan tutte, and Don Giovanni. But those three are really three of the most successful of Mozart's career, especially in terms of opera buffa, the comic operas. So I think that's a great example of a great partnership. Of course, Gilbert and Sullivan and the Gershwin brothers, George and Ira. The first big success that they had was Oklahoma in 1943. And so these five that we're going to talk about today were written between 1943, in the middle of the war, at the height of the war, until 1959, which was The Sound of Music, when that one debuted. So by looking at The Sound of Music, The Sound of Music really is, like, in some ways, could be considered maybe the greatest musical of this era. This is also the same era as Music Man. And Music Man, I think, is also one of the great musicals of that era. It's also close to Fiddler on the Roof, which I think is another great one. So I'm not diminishing or taking anything away from some of these other ones. But in terms of the paradigm, in terms of the historical perspective, looking back at these, we can really look at The Sound of Music as really being one of, if not the greatest example of the Broadway musical from this time. Of course, we think about the film adaptation, which was done on March 2, was when it was released, of 1965. So a lot of people had had the opportunity to see the show on Broadway before this film version, which is incredibly iconic unto itself, with Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer. It won the Academy for Best Picture. Now, why is it that Don Giovanni and Marriage of Figaro are so good by Mozart? Why is the Mikado so good, and Pirates of Penzance? Well, it comes down to the music. That's really the vehicle for reaching people. When we really whittle it down, really what makes this show so successful, it's not just one song, it's a whole group of them. You know, there's the title track, The Sound of Music. There's Do Re Mi. There's My Favorite Things. There's Edelweiss. So we have a group of super finely crafted songs that just made their way into the fabric of American culture. So we're in a minor key, and so if I just play, that's a minor scale, and each note has a degree name: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that home chord is made up of the notes 1, 3, and 5. If I change 3, I can make it major. Now, what's really clever about the melody of this particular song is that it avoids the third. All the notes of the melody dance around the third, but we never get that particular note. And then, brilliantly, the chord changes. I could move it again. Or I could make it major. We're hearing open fifths, which is, in terms of the harmonic series of music, one of the most fundamental intervals. And he's going above, and then he's going below. If it reminds you of Jeopardy, it should. And so, in terms of the construction of this song, he just kind of lets it play out. He goes through the down third progressions and lets that melody just repeat, but under a different chord, or over a different chord, with a different chord under it. And then, of course, the middle section of the song, he changes it to major. And it doesn't affect the melody or the singer at all, just the chords underneath. And all of a sudden, everything feels fresh. Because even though the melody hasn't changed, these subtle variations in the chord, whether it's major or minor, or using the sixth chord with underneath the melody, those types of harmonic changes fuel then the progression of the song, and the melody just simply can repeat itself because it doesn't contain that third. So the melody itself doesn't point you to a harmonic direction. It leaves it vague by leaving out that note, which allows him just to use these chord progressions underneath to create the sense of drama. And that's part of the reason why this song is so brilliant. Opposite of this song in some ways is Edelweiss. And the thing about Edelweiss is it's in a sense more lyrical. We could look at the melody of My Favorite Things as maybe being more motivic. Ba-dum-bum. And just kind of using that motive. Ba-dum-bum, 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 ba-dum. It's like motivically generated. Edelweiss, however, is thematic. That we have to think about the length of the thematic line. Edelweiss, Edelweiss, here we are singing together. And what we get here is a much more classical structure. To just bring you up to speed, many of you probably know this, but we would call that a musical phrase. Those all four measures. Edelweiss, Edelweiss, here we're singing the first phrase. That's the end of the first phrase. Then we get the next phrase, which is very similar to it. Edelweiss, Edelweiss, down to homeland forever. So what we get is a construction of these two phrases that is very much in the style of Haydn, Beethoven. Classical structured music, classical themes, four measure themes, kind of very predictable that way. So it's a completely different style of composition than My Favorite Things. It's looking backwards a little bit more, but it's also drawing on sentiment. And remember where this is taking place. Austria, Switzerland, Germany, why not evoke the methods of the masters from that area? Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, right? A couple of good Austrians and a German in there. So why not mimic essentially the construction of that music in evoking this very, very tender ballad in this particular piece? The other thing that we get in this piece that keeps it relatively simple and very much like Haydn and Beethoven in particular are the harmonies. One chord, five chord, one chord, four chord, back to the one chord, and homeland forever. So he's not doing anything revolutionary in terms of the harmony. And so what we end up with is, once again, simple elements. It's harder than it seems. You're like, well, if I just keep it simple, then it'll be successful. Well, not necessarily. The opera house is going in the direction during this time of artistic bending. The composers are bending to being as artistic and as different and as dark and not tuneful as they can possibly be. And that helps aid the success of music theater. The thing that Dick Rodgers really understood was how to write a tune, a tuneful tune, a singable tune, during an era when that wasn't going on at all in classical music. And what was it doing? It was actually pushing audiences away, at least general audiences, and pushing them right into the doors of musical theater, where they could hear music, they could gravitate to, they could understand, they could sing along with. So Edelweiss is, I like to think of it as like an anchor. It's one of those pieces that, because of that traditional construction, makes people gravitate towards it.